Validation is a drug. It's subtle and unfortunately is socially acceptable. And most people don't even realize they're addicted to it. We work harder, we hustle longer, we say yes when our soul is begging us to say no because we desire one thing. We want it so badly to be seen as enough. But here's the truth: validation promises worth, kind of, but it delivers exhaustion. It keeps you performing instead of living. It keeps you chasing instead of healing, and it rewires your identity around what other people think. That's scary. But today we're going to rewrite that story. We're going to pull the mask off the addiction of approval, and we're going to be reminded what the truth is. Your worth is not up for public vote. You're going to want to be here today, you guys, because I promise you, if you're listening, there's some part of this that you struggle with. So let's get in and rewrite it because that shit shouldn't define us. Have you ever hit a moment where success wasn't enough? Where the weight of your past and the scars no one sees, or the doubts you don't dare voice, keep you from breaking through to the life you know you're capable of? Maybe on the outside, you've achieved more than most, but inside, there's still something holding you back. If that hits home, take a breath. You found your people. You found your tribe. Welcome to That Shit Does Not Define You, Stories of Hope. I'm Athena Captain, joined by my co-host, Jada Haycraft. This isn't just another podcast, friends. It's a space to strip away the labels, the shame, and the invisible barrier standing between you and your next chapter in life.
In every episode, we'll bring you raw, real stories of resilience, people who have rewritten their lives, and give you the strategies and tools to do the same. Whether you're climbing out of rock bottom or breaking through to your next level, your future starts here. Let's get started.
Right, Jada?
Amen. And it's a battle that every single person has struggled in one way or another, silently or out loud. So, yeah, excited to talk about this one today.
Well, I'm so excited for everybody that is listening today. We are having a fun season doing different addictions outside of just drugs and alcohol, only because we are sick of things robbing your life. I mean, Jada and I are tired of watching people we love and watching people that we have met where addiction is robbing them from the life they want. And if you've been listening, you're going to see there's a theme. It's interesting. No matter what the addiction is, there's a theme. You're going to see that you have it because other things are really struggling. The things that matter in life are struggling in your life. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. Please, we've got to say this: like, subscribe, please leave reviews. It is what the people that control the online world demand for us to have impact. I tell you, currently we don't make money on this. We are doing this because we want to share stories to help you change your life or your friends' lives. So minimally share this. I know there's somebody that needs to hear this. We just want to thank you for being here. And Jada, this topic, when we came up with it, was, we always think about who could we interview to bring extra people, but I have struggled with this so much in my life that I thought, you know what? Why don't we just have you interview me, and I will bring in my own story, but I will bring in stories of other people that I know and people that I've coached. And so that you guys, the audience, you guys are hearing more than just Athena's story. You're hearing really my compiling information because I think it's really important. And I'll be transparent. Jada knows me extremely well. She's family and she works with me, and she knows I struggle with this, and we'll dig into this. And she's watched this topic rob me of joy, rob me of impact, slowed processes down for me. She has seen physically in real time the impact of needing to feel like enough, needing validation can cause. So I'm excited to dig into it and kind of share with you some tips and tricks and some ways we can take control back of our lives. So Jada, thank you for being willing to interview me today.
Of course. And, I may throw in a story here or there too, just because it's something we all struggle with. So,
I know. And
you
I know
know,
you have so many people that you have in your life that probably have the same, I mean, right. And I'm not trying to leave our male listeners out there, but women specifically really struggle with this. Men do too, but women specifically really struggle with this. So, take it away. Ask me any question you want. I'm available. I've got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Well, my first question, it kind of take us back
Okay.
to the first time that you realized that you had tied your worth to what others thought of you, and we can start there.
All right. Well, first of all, I think we've got to get really honest, and I think if you're listening right now, this is why we talk about therapy so much. If we ever were paid by a program, it needs to be a therapy program. I'll tell you, right? Jada
Truly.
said that, but I will just tell you, mine. I want to talk with Jada really where the root of it came from, right? So as a child, I was not validated. I was not made to feel like I was valuable. I was not made to feel safe. And what ends up happening is when you're not in an environment where you are nurtured and loved and where you don't have to earn your value, um, then you start seeking it. And you start seeking it by doing things. You start looking for external things to give you that feeling of worth. And so I honestly, and I know this is going to be a silly story, but it's a true story. So I think those are sometimes the best. And I don't think this will shock many of you who follow me or know me, but so I was in elementary school, and you guys, I don't remember if I was in 3rd, 4th, or 5th or 6th grade. I don't remember that, but I was in elementary school. And it was one of the times I was staying with my great grandma. Now, when I stayed with my great grandma, a lot of my extreme abuse settled because I got to stay with her and she kept me safer. And I got to go to a Christian school. And I loved that, right? And I really enjoyed that Christian school. And but anyway, so I was at this Christian school and uh, I don't know how I came up with the idea, I don't remember now, but I had decided that the school needed a Jericho moment and that we needed as a school body to march around the church and the school. They were attached and literally blow shafars and march around that building to reclaim the building. And now that sounds very like honorable and wonderful. And I think there was a part of my heart that really wanted God to move. I do believe that. And I do believe that I was being prompted by the Spirit, if you will, or I was being prompted for us to be praying for the school. But I remember getting, I don't want to say a buzz, but getting hyped, excited for the attention got me. How much the teachers thought how amazing I was for wanting this. How I people saw me as a leader. Even the upperclassmen, because it went to high school, saw me as that. And I gotta tell you, it was the very first time I thought, man, if you step up and you do something, then people really think you're worthy. People really think you're something. And although there's shreds of truth in there, the sadness is I should have been proud of myself. There should have been things that were appropriate for that. But it's the first time I really understood my need to be validated outside of myself. And by the way, we did the Jericho March.
I think that's something that we can all relate to at some point in childhood, whether it was, elementary school, middle school, I mean, even just adolescence and high school, really. I mean, I think that's where I'd say middle school and high school is where that really started to show up for me was getting validation for my achievements and being really good at soccer or being really good at cheer, being really good at academics. Like that was something I took so much pride in a sense of I was looking for validation from others to approve that I had reached the next rank or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is I think what's hard about this is it's good to be driven and want to achieve. It's good to want to be the best you. And
Mhm.
this is one thing that makes me frustrated about this is there was nothing wrong with what I was doing, nothing wrong with you wanting to be your best.
Yeah.
But because we were trying to seek validation, it tarnished something that should have been just beautiful,
Mhm. Definitely.
right?
And that's something like I realized, especially in high school, I started to realize that like the things that I would get validated for in middle school, like kind of just were like numb to me. Like I didn't necessarily care as much in high school. And so it always felt like I was trying to level up. Even to
Mm,
the point of when I got valedictorian, I was like, okay, cool. What's the next achievement I can get? Because that didn't feel like enough. And for me, that's not to make it about me, but for me, that's like when I realized I was like, okay, you know, I'm seeking validation from other people and not even just at this point being proud of something that was really hard and, like, really cool to accomplish.
mhm. It takes that away from you.
Mhm.
And I think that, and, I hear you because you worked hard for that.
Yeah.
And I think my gut feeling is you would have achieved that anyway,
Mhm.
but you would have been able to rest in the achievement, be proud of yourself
Mhm.
and celebrate yourself. And that need for validation outside just robbed you.
Yeah.
And that's ditto, right? It just robs you. And I know there are people listening, and you guys, we're talking about addiction. And when we say addiction, I want to say this. This is it's a subtle addiction. It's not something that is like people are like, man. We're not talking about narcissistic behavior here. We're talking about non-narcissistic people who have things that have happened in their life that make them seek validation outside of themselves. And it's empty and it robs you of so much. But thank you for sharing that. And by the way, didn't you go on to college to also get
I did. I went on to college and graduated in 3 years, and was a top 10 senior in my major.
Yeah,
So, I definitely am a high achiever.
you
If anyone's
are,
familiar with the Enneagram, I am a 3, which is an achiever. Whether part of that was born into me and some of it was built into me.
right? Well, and my hope is now that
Yeah.
because you in your career, I can speak to the last 4 years that you've worked with me. You have had huge improvements and, I mean, achievements. I mean, you have huge achievements. You're considered one of our best and brightest. Do you get to do you get to enjoy those now?
Get to enjoy, like,
Do you get to own those?
uh,
Are you still seeking the validation, or now with those achievements in your professional life, are
yeah.
you more able to say, "You know what? Dang it, I earned that," and
Yeah, I'll say definitely I'm not, like, seeking the validation anymore,
That's
although if
good.
I never got words of affirmation that I was doing a good job at work, I would really struggle. So,
Well, yeah, me
I think
too.
there's that
Yeah,
balance
yeah,
there of I do sometimes still need to be told that I'm doing a good job, not
yeah.
because I'm seeking the validation, but just to make sure that those thoughts of, like, "I'm a bad employee" don't creep in.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second because I think
Yeah,
this is important,
yeah,
for people to understand. You j Seeking validation doesn't mean you don't wanna have words of affirmation,
totally.
okay? And it doesn't mean that you don't wanna be told when you're doing a good job.
Mhm.
I think we all want that. We talk on our referral roadmap how important that is to people. I certainly want that. I will say as a leader, I get the least amount of words of affirmation in that, and that was a struggle for me. I mean, I've gotten better at it, praise God, now, but as I ascended, we'll say, my career corporate ladder leadership. Man, Jada, in my 20s, I had that "I love me" wall, right? I had to win all the
Yeah.
awards. I had to have everybody tell me how amazing I was. And then as I matured and the higher level I got, at first, when I first transitioned into leadership and the accolades slowed down, it was a struggle.
Mm.
It was a struggle.
Yeah.
And then what happened is I realized I'm actually processing this as we're talking. that I don't need it as much anymore because my accolades now come from my team's performance.
Mhm. And that's
Which
something I've heard. I have friends that have, gone into, like, recent management, and before they were, like, a sole, what do they call it? Sole performer, basically, but they
Mhm.
they were,
Yeah.
in charge of their own metrics, and now they're managing teams, and they're in charge of their metrics, and it's one of those things they've said, whenever your team's doing really good, it's good on your team. Whenever your team's doing really bad, it's shame on the manager, and
And
so
it
I have
mhm.
friends right now that are struggling with that because they're like, "My team's doing really good, I don't even get that, like, recognition." But then whenever they're doing really bad, it's all the manager's fault, quote, unquote, you know? Um, and so
That's
I'm
called
sure you
leadership.
yeah, I'm sure you've experienced that throughout your years of leadership as
I
well.
and that is something I actually say a lot, which is really funny because it's true.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I will say this, and we'll get back to the validation. It is also one of the reasons when one of my team members is underperforming, I take it excessively personal, like really personal. Um, w- yeah, I'll leave it there because I do. I take it very personal, and it agitates me very
Yeah.
much so. But
No, that makes sense. Okay, going off of that, though, I do
yeah,
have a question of
yeah.
why do you think that it is that high achievers, like business owners, CEOs, caregivers, like, why do you think that those higher achieving people tend to struggle with this more than others?
Well, okay. First of all, I don't know the science here, but I'm just going to give you my opinion. I think there is a number of people who are high achievers that are overcoming trauma. I do think achievement is a trauma response. So there is that. Because a lot of us, not all, but a lot of us achievers are high achievers because we're overcompensating, we're out to prove something, etc. Now, and actually, I don't hardly know a high achiever that that's not the case. Now, the levels of trauma are different, but there's something that is pushing us. And so, if we haven't gotten great therapy to regulate and figure out that okay, this happened and so it's pushing me towards being this high achiever, we're going to end up burnt out unless we realize, okay, look, I'm going to take this ugly thing that happened and I'm going to use it as fuel to go be the best I can be. So there's a different component to that. There's I recognize it, I'm dealing with it, I'm going to achieve despite but not need validated. The other is I'm going to achieve and achieve and achieve to get validated, to get validated, to get validated. One will turn you into the one over here will turn you into somebody very productive. The other one will turn you into somebody excessively burnt out. And so I think that's why, most do, um, unfortunately. But that's
Yeah,
just
and that
my
makes
I'm
sense.
not a psychologist, that's what I think.
Well, and I do think that kinda goes back to what we talked about earlier in this season, and forgive me, I can't remember what episode it was, but where I interviewed you on workaholism, and I think that this validation can lead to workaholism
Absolutely. And burnout,
and burnout.
just
Yeah.
burnout, because, you when you are seeking validation outside of yourself, you're n you're never gonna get it. You're never gonna get it, and I think we've talked about that, I tease, on our professional thing all the time, "Do not get your emotional needs met at work." Well, you know why I say that so much, is because I used to.
Yeah.
And you can have a boss that doesn't like you, you can have a season that's kicking your rear, there are so many things outside of your control that if your identity comes from achievement in your career, you just know it's gonna be a roller coaster and not stable, not sustainable, and, n an emotional nightmare, and I've lived that, I've done that, and, by the grace of God, God has delivered me from that. is I now would say I would say 80%. I wouldn't say like that is something I will always have to continue to surrender, right?
Uh-huh.
But 80% of everything I do now career wise is less based on being validated by others and more by being obedient to God for me. And I was able to do that shift. And for me, that's a better validation. And I think I have said to you before, somebody asked me, what do you want it said of you before you die? And I want it said that she did what he asked her to do. And
Yeah.
I'm talking about God, that I
Yeah.
did what he asked me to do, no matter what it cost. And that I fulfilled my purpose. And I know within that purpose will be in, making an impact and using my life experiences and stuff. But anyway, all that to say, yeah, I think that's why high achievers are doing that.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And so you mentioned what validation costs. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are and like what are those hidden costs of constantly seeking approval, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual costs, and then how does that creep into relationships and parenting and even leadership?
Okay, girl.
It's a very loaded question. There's a lot
Well,
there.
let's just unpack that. So it affects everything. So I'll give you real life examples. It is a dampener to all of the things that matter. It's a dampener to all things that matter. I'll start with leadership. As a leader, your job is not to be liked. As a leader, your job is to be respected, but you have to earn that respect. You need to do behaviors worthy of respect. Okay. So people who think, well, I'm the boss, I should be respected. Respect is earned. Respect is earned. So you need to deliver character and behavior that is respectful. And what happens though, if you are a leader and you want validation outside of yourself, you will do things that make people like you instead of what is the respectful, hard thing to do for the team. And which will diminish your leadership, diminish your growth, and hurt your team. So, leadership, man, that's you do not want I want my team to respect me, but if I lived only for my team to like me and get validation from those who work for me, I would not be an effective leader in the workplace.
Mhm.
So, you gotta think about that. Here's the other thing, and I'll just be honest, I'll talk about relationships, and I'm gonna get very vulnerable here. So, I have, again, childhood stuff, man, that stuff is like, it lingers, but I, have really struggled my entire life at feeling attractive and pretty enough and all of that. And I'm not looking for comments on that. It's just the truth. And it all stems, by the way, from not feeling valuable and worthy. Okay? It really is less about the physical and more about the obviously somebody's going to throw me away. That's how it feels. Like obviously you're not something enough to throw away. And so when you're looking for validation ex- on the exterior, I have put my husband through hell at the beginning of our marriage. Almost to the point where, I mean, I'm surprised he stuck it out with me, to be frank, because I wanted so, and he's probably going to kill me for saying this. His girlfriend before me, he like went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, is all I can say. I mean, he told the world how much he loved her, how beautiful she was, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And which is not really his temperament. And I gotta tell you, for like the first, I don't know, 4 years of our relationship, I just thought because I wanted him to have that same response to me, the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? And I thought if he could go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, you're probably like, what the hell does that mean? Like where you've lost your ever loving mind for somebody, right? I wanted him to have that same reaction, to tell the world like she's, whatever. And he never did, and he wouldn't. Um And he got so much slack and heat and anguish from me for that, because I wanted that exterior validation. I wanted the world to know he wanted me more than her. How stupid is that? He married me. Like, he used to say, "I married you." Like, what else do you know?
He's like, everyone should know.
Yeah, he's like, "I think the world knows I married you." But gosh, you play those games, right? And by the way, but I did make his life living hell because I wanted him to do something, and he just wouldn't. He couldn't. And matter of fact, if he was here defending himself, he would tell you in our relationship, he didn't go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He fell in love with our friendship. He fell in love with the stability of our friendship. And it was our friendship and this stability of that friendship, which was much more calmer, that he fell in love with. And that is less theatrical, right? Um,
Totally.
but much more honoring and much more real, right? And he will tell you today the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is a short-lived, like, high, boom, where, the other. But I sure did want that validation, and it created a lot of strife in the beginning of my marriage because I felt like I wasn't getting that. And but it also, you can look at it in any relationship you have. I think of women to women, right? As women, if we are seeking validation from the exterior, it's harder for us to celebrate our other lady friends, right? And that's tragic because as women need to be celebrating each other in every way possible. We need to be encouraging each other, celebrating each other, cheering each other on, praying for each other, standing by each other. But if we need the world to validate us, we're going to less likely do that because of insecurity. And that is systemic, if I'm saying that right, systemic.
Systemic. Yeah.
That is a problem through the female populace that I
Yeah. I
really
have
would
to
love
share
if.
something that will maybe
Yeah,
probably make you laugh.
yeah.
Something James says whenever I'm watching trash reality TV, because that is my guilty pleasure. I do it like once a year.
I'm gonna say, I don't think I'm like, "Really? Okay."
It's
I'm not
like
judging, I'm just,
no, it's something I very rarely do, but when I do and he, like, overhears the TV or whether it's I'm watching it on Hulu on my phone or whatever, he will say, "No one wants a woman to fail more than a woman." And
Yeah,
like
he's
he
not
will,
wrong, and that's sad.
no, and he listened to them for, like, less than 5 minutes, and he's like, "They are, like, really
Mm-mm.
insecure," is really
Okay,
what it comes down to, but
I just have to okay, so this'll I got to watch the CMA Awards,
mm,
and I don't get to usually do that, but it was mine that's what I do if I'm being mindless, watch something like that. However, I love Lainey Wilson, and, she said something in one of her acceptance speeches that I almost got off the couch and was like, "Yeah!" Because she was going down the line of other women within the country industry that had, because she hosted it. Now, she also won a bunch of awards, but she hosted it. She went down the line of people who have been in the industry for 50 years or whatever, who would text her the morning of, praying for her, how many people who have supported her, all of this stuff. And she was talking about all of these women in country, and she named a ton of them, how they've all how supportive they all are of each other, and they're competitor. Matter of fact, she won Entertainer of the Year, and a woman, Lambert, how do you say her first name?
Miranda Lambert?
Yes, was up for the same award, and Lainey said, I can't say her name.
Miranda?
Miranda.
Miranda.
Miranda, thank you. She told Miranda, "Thank you for being there for me. Thank you for having my back, for sitting around fires and telling me what I should and shouldn't do." And she just beat her, right?
Yeah.
And but she said all of this, and she said, "Women, go find the women that are pray with you, stand with you, support you, even if they're competing with you." And then she said this, and I agree with all of that, but she said this, I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "And to all of you women who are eating Cheetos in your parents' basement, who are trying to pin women against women, get a life." And I was like, "Yes!" Right?
Gosh.
And it's like, we need to really be supportive of each other,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it's really important. And so that we're not looking exteriorly for people to validate who we are. And I know that's hard. I know it's hard.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's awesome though that she stood up and said that. I didn't watch it, so I wasn't aware, but that's
Oh,
really
that's gonna go viral. I know that one's going
for
viral.
sure. People are gonna be using that quote for a year until the
Eat
next,
your Cheetos and shut up.
and Oh, man. Okay, so when was or if you can point to what that turning point was for you when you realized that you were people pleasing and seeking validation and it was destroying parts of your life. Can you take us to where that turning point was?
Mhm. Yeah. And by the way, this is an ongoing surrender. What I mean by that is kind of like, people who have drug addictions or whatever, they say it's day by day. Okay. So when I say this, it's not like, boosh, I flipped a switch and
I'm
I never
healed.
struggled. No, that's not true. But I will tell you when. And it was when I finally got therapy, when I got very intense EMDR, intense psychological and spiritual uh, therapy. And I worked through why I felt the way I did, why I needed so much exterior validation, why I felt unworthy, why I needed people to like me, why I was striving so hard. I It was through that process. And for me personally, a lot of that process, that healing process, was me take going back and surrendering a lot of that to God and realizing that when I was born, I was extremely valuable. And just because the people around me didn't treat me like so because of their brokenness, didn't change the fact that Jesus Christ died for me. And he would have died for me all by myself if I was the only person. And that for me started at where I'm like, okay, I am valuable. And I struggle to tell people, there's a lot of like, you're enough. I always like to tell people you're worthy because of somebody who is been wounded like I have, and somebody who has struggled with, needing validation and pleasing people, and somebody who struggled with workaholism. Man, I sound like a mess. Then I will just tell you, you don't need to tell somebody like me you're enough because you know what? I'll go be enough. I'll go independently do it without other people. I'll wear that like a badge, and that's not healthy. Okay. Enough really means you're worthy, but sometimes enough means that you have a tribe enough to hold you up. Enough means that your faith can hold you up. Enough doesn't mean you do it all by yourself. I really want people to hear that. So Jada, I'm cautious about the enough stuff only because for an overachiever, I can manipulate that in my brain and take it somewhere ugly. So, but that's when it for me, it really took a lot of counseling to understand where it was, and then start recognizing. And I think we've talked about this through this whole series. You need to start looking at your life and seeing what is hurting in your life because of the addiction. What is hurting in your life because of the addiction. And I'm going to be very vulnerable and say this: after I got that healing and started to look for areas in my life where I was looking for validation that wasn't healthy, unfortunately, I realized I was in a marriage that the whole marriage was based on me trying to look for validation, and I was in an unhealthy situation. Um, but because of a number of things, I wasn't seeing it for what it was until I got healthy.
Thank you for sharing that. So I know you've talked about your faith, you've talked about therapy. What other tools or boundaries really helped you break that cycle and reclaim your identity?
A tribe. You need a tribe of people who love you enough to check you. Um, and I mean that. So yes, you need therapy, you need faith, but you also need a tribe of people who are supporting you, love you, but will also call you out in a loving manner. Um, you know, as we scale my businesses, I have made it very clear to everyone around me, if I start to make this about me, If I start to need this for my own identity, I need you guys to check me because it will devalue what we're doing. And I have been honest about that. And I think my team, my team understands. I think they are loving. We're all in the same. We want my experiences to have a positive impact, on you listeners. So I have people around me that will check me to make sure that I'm grounded and that I'm not from, success of my new book launching or the podcast, whatever. Those are not where my identity, my validation come from. My validation comes from things that are not exterior. Now I can get accolades and praise and that's fun, but that's not where my value comes from. And so faith, therapy, and a really good tribe.
I love that. Well, thank you. And before we jump into the science, I do have one last question. So, what is one practical, courageous step that someone can take maybe this week to detach their worth from that external validation?
Mm, sit with yourself. In the EOS world, which is entrepreneurial operating system, you can watch the other podcast and we go deep into it, but we call these things called a clarity break. And a clarity break is where you step aside and you allow yourself an hour, let's say, where you pick a subject and you really assess it. I would say give yourself an hour to do a clarity break where you truly look and ask yourself, what is something I am doing that I am seeking validation for on the external, and allow yourself to process that for yourself. You got to identify it first.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing all that, Athena. I know you'll have some more rubber meets the road
I will.
for our listeners, but before we get into that, I do have some science I want to share if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So the first set talks about how validation lights up the same reward pathways as addiction. So really just honing in on validation is addiction. So studies show that praise activates that dopamine circuit, which is identical to those triggered by gambling or narcotics, according to the
Whoa.
Journal of Behavioral Science.
I had no idea.
Yes.
That's crazy.
I know. That dopamine is so real and it just man, it infiltrates every part of your life.
Well,
So the second one really talks about how people pleasing is linked to chronic anxiety and emotional burnout. So long term resilience on others' approval increases your cortisol levels and reduces your self trust, according to the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And then last but not least, there's a self and identity research review from 2020 that I found that shows that identity shifts under external pressure. And the research confirmed that when self worth depends on approval, individuals experience increased depression and a loss of autonomy.
yeah. Because I feel that. That's what we were talking about. Your validation comes from things outside of your control, you're going to get depressed because things are going to not go well.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about somebody who is this massive achievement at work and then they're laid off.
Hmm.
Man, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So,
anyway, thank you. That science was very good. All right, you guys. So
yeah.
you guys know we want to give you rubber meets the road. And this is where we hope that you are saving it. And I hope you have a journal that you're taking notes because we give you some great tips. But I know Jada also has our resource guide that you can download to make it even easier for you. But number one thing I want you guys to do is just pause and do that clarity break and identify what it is that you are doing. And then number two, I want you to ask yourself before you say yes to something, why you're saying yes to it, right? People pleasing typically makes us say yes to everything when we need to not be saying yes to everything. Matter of fact, saying yes to everything oftentimes destroys our priorities, our goals, and the
Yeah.
things that we want to do in life.
Yeah.
And so and or deplenish us from the things that matter. So number 2, ask yourself before you say yes to something else, ask yourself, why am I saying it? All right,
Mm.
number 3, start creating micro boundaries. What does that mean? I want you to start carving out small smignets of time in your calendar where you allow your brain to process, to think, and to breathe. I will tell you, I know this sounds weird, but oftentimes when we are seeking validation outside of ourselves, we keep ourselves so busy we can't think. And I want you to slow down enough to think. And I would love if I get to infiltrate you here in your mind. If I was coaching you, the number 4 thing I would love for you to do in one of these sessions when you take a break. And that is where I want you to what we call Jada the success journal.
Mhm.
I want you to take time to write out what did you do well this week? What are you proud of about yourself? Where are you growing? What's something unique and amazing about yourself? I want you to really stop and give yourself the permission to brag to yourself about yourself, right? And I encourage my coaching clients to do this, but to reach out to somebody that you can trust that can be your brag buddy, right? That you can brag to and be like, you are not going to believe. I have one of my newest coaching clients. He's killing it. And I get texts from him probably twice a week where he's like, oh my gosh, I did that prospecting thing and I just closed another client. Boom. And I love that. And what he's doing, we talked about dopamine, that what he's doing is bragging. He has I'm a safe bragger. You can brag to me anytime you want. And he's bragging about himself. Well, what that does is it gives that dopamine hit. And so what that's going to do for his business is he's going to keep doing those behaviors that are positive. So by the way, you're negative enough to yourself. Stop for a second and spend some time you praising yourself, right? Being proud of yourself. I know it's not easy. By the way, this is one of the hardest things for anyone I coach. This is one of the hardest things. But you'll get used to it and it's kind of fun. But it's more fun when you have a brag buddy. All right. And last, limit comparison triggers. Okay, you guys, when we want validation outside of ourselves and we're spending all day on social sites and comparing ourselves to unrealistic things, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're truly setting yourself up for failure. Please understand that you comparing to yourself to anyone on social media or even in your life. Like Jada is amazing. Okay. She's got all of these things that I'm super proud of her, that I admire about her, that I even brag about her behind her back all the time. But I'm not Jada. I'm not going to be good at the same thing Jada is good at. Thank God, because we work on the same team. We got to be good at different things. Right.
Truly.
But here's the thing. Praise other people's attributes, but don't compare yourself to them. I have a number of friends that are coaches and, um, man, every time I start to feel like, "Man, they're killing me in this," I have to stop myself and say, "Hey, stop it. Stop that. You're in a different place, they're doing different things." And I give you a little trick. Anytime I start to compare, I then stop myself and say, "No, like, go praise them. Send them a text and tell them if you switch it to where instead of comparing, you're congratulating, you're praising them, you're supporting them, somehow you just stop comparing. It's really weird. I don't have Jada, I know you have a lot more psychology science behind you and you like science, but there's something to that. It's a pattern interrupt where you change your brain from I'm comparing, I feel less to oh my gosh, that they're killing it. I'm going to celebrate them. All of a sudden, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about how awesome somebody else is doing. And it goes
Definitely.
from being diminishing to inspiring.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I almost even think about it too in the aspect of, like, whenever you are encouraging people for the great accolades that they're doing, most of the time you know them a little bit more on an intimate level and you're not just seeing their highlight reels for the most part. Whereas, like, social media, you really are just seeing everyone's highlight reel. Like, most people aren't gonna post, I dropped my coffee on my kitchen floor this morning, and then I ran into a door, and then I had a bruise on my head, and then on my way to the car, I dropped my purse and everything got spilled, and no one's gonna write, like, minute by minute of how horrible their morning started. All they're gonna post is, "I made an amazing sale today at work." No one's gonna know the before, for the most part.
Or right, or,
Yeah.
you know, or
And that
whatever
was,
it
like, a
is.
very, like,
Although I
double.
have to tell you, I think that post would be far more entertaining to me than I made like, that would be just by the way, if you did describe all that and then said, "Oh, but by the way, I still killed it at work," now that would be an awesome post.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
right?
truly would be.
It would be because, well, hello, all of us have had that morning, right? I
Yep.
mean, Jada, I know you have been thrown up on or pooped on or whatever and had to clean
Oh,
yourself up and
I
get on
surely have,
camera.
and I even remember, like, this was in the early the first year of marriage whenever, I worked at a financial firm, and I had a Wednesday team meeting where I had to be at the office by 6 a.m., and I lived about 30 minutes from the office, so, like, getting up, getting out the door was hard sometimes. I didn't have a toddler at the time, and it was still hard. But I remember one morning specifically, my coffee was too hot, so I put it in the freezer without the lid because who does that? And to just cool it down a little bit before I put ice in it because I didn't want the ice to get super melty. And I go to open up the freezer door and it just falls everywhere, spills everywhere. I don't have time to clean it up because I'm already running late. And then I don't have my coffee. And James is the most sweetest husband. And he was like, go to work. I got it. And he like cleaned it up. But I probably cried on my way to work just because I was sad that I didn't have my coffee that morning and I was tired.
You're like,
But all
but
that
you
to
know
say,
what?
like, no one would have known. I got to work, I led the meeting at 6 a.m., and no one would have known, you know?
They would have never known. But you know what? See, that would have been the funnier post.
Yeah,
The picture of all the coffee. But
truly.
hey, you guys, here's the thing I just want to say validation addiction doesn't have to define you, right? We don't have to do that. It doesn't mean you're weak either. If you're struggling with this, remember, none of these mean shame, weakness, anything. It just means you've been surviving with strategies that protect you. That's really important to understand. But they're keeping you stuck, and we don't want you to be stuck. We want you to live your best life. So here's the good news. You have the ability to rewrite your story. You can detach your worth from approval and other people. You can walk into rooms and as your whole self and not perform. You can be you and be great. Um, and freedom is possible. And honestly, healing is right around the corner. You just got to accept it. And hey, can I add one thing? I met with a CEO who hired me. One of her employees got on board, and I got to meet with her yesterday. Oh, she's going to be dynamic. But Jada, I could just feel tension. And so I stopped the coaching and I just said, "Are you okay? Like, what?" I get the sense that you're really nervous. She got tears here and she goes, "I don't know why I'm so nervous." She's like, "I'm meeting with you and then I'm meeting with my first client meeting." And she's like, "I just want to so badly succeed." And I said, "Let's just stop for a second." And I said, "Let's breathe." And I said, "All you have to do is walk in and be you, and you're gonna be great." And you could tell at first she was like, "Mm," and we went a little bit deeper, and you could just see her whole body just, "Okay." I said, "Hey, what we're going over here is strategy, but strategy doesn't replace the human. It's you who's the superstar. The strategy is just what the superstar does." And she was like, "Right?" And so she just got to calm down. Now I can't wait. She's supposed to text me today to see how it went. But I'm just saying, again, she was so nervous looking for, am I going to be okay? And when she realized she could walk in her room for, first couple weeks on the job and just be authentically her and that she was going to do it well enough, you could, anyway, those are the great moments in coaching that I love.
Mm, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Athena, and
Yeah,
I'm excited to hear back about how that went for her
I
too.
know.
You
Me
have to
too.
let me
Me
know.
too. I know. All right. So where do we go from here?
Yes. So if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, or just needs hope in general. This whole
Mm.
podcast is about stories of hope. So please share it, leave us a review because that is how other people find us easier. We are at the whim of the Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all the people to be found. And so please leave us a review, share it, like, subscribe, all the things. And don't forget, Athena's book is coming soon. So get your early access bonuses and updates by joining the list in the link in the show notes. We will also include a link to download the season's resource guide in the show notes that Athena mentioned before. But we do always want to leave you with something serious. So this is not your practice life. It's time to stop auditioning for roles you were never meant to play.
Mhm.
Thank you
Amen.
for being here. We'll see you
Yep.
next week.
Bye, everyone.